What's up, True Crime World? You're here with Liminal on the Wall. I'm Bevy.
And I'm Becky. And today's case is a textbook example of domestic violence ending in death. But the manner of death leaves ambiguity to who is ultimately responsible. This is a case of Mark Van Dongen. Listeners' discretion is advised.
Well, hello to all of our LOTW friends and family.
Yes, hello.
And hi, sister.
Hey there. Oh, Bevy.
Nice. I see you're in a mood.
I guess so. We're both sleepy today.
Yeah, a little sleepy. I got a lot going on, and I've been fighting a sickness.
Again. Classic Bev.
Craig got COVID. He gave me COVID. We gave his mom COVID. It was not good. Like, our holidays and our vacation was just marked with sickness.
Yeah.
So, there's that.
You're ready. Like, new year, new you, no sickness.
Yeah, please. Can January just be the month of, like, no illnesses? It'd be great for me right now.
I know.
But it is what it is.
You know, I'm shocked that you guys only got Craig's mom sick, because we still saw you at Christmas.
I know. I couldn't
And you guys
even
were
believe
hella
it.
sick.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with that. It's not even like she was like right next to us or anything. Maybe she just has a weakened immune system. She's trying to lower her cholesterol, so she's not maybe eating as much, you know, like sometimes I think like food can help you fight off illnesses.
For sure.
I don't know if that's accurate.
You know what? Honestly, what I think, how I avoided it, I'll tell you how. And Jamie, actually. We drank so much of our juiced juice that we made with tons of ginger, lemon, all the vitamins, you know. We weren't low on anything, so I feel like that's how we definitely kept our immune system top notch.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So
Drink the juice.
drink the juice, guys.
Drink the juice. Well, Bev, enough about our
Sicknesses.
health
Yeah.
and sickness.
Like,
Really just yours.
yeah.
Just along for the ride, I guess. Let's get into our case.
All right, let's do it.
In 2010, Mark Van Dongen, a 23-year-old civil engineer from Belgium, was exploring dating sites when he connected with a woman who piqued his interest. Her name was Berlinah Wallace. She was 18 years older than him and was from South Africa. She was a fashion student living in Bristol, England at the time. Berlinah was charismatic, stylish, and confident, qualities that captivated Mark despite their age difference. Now, Mark was eager to meet Berlinah, so he traveled from Belgium to Bristol to go on their first date. The two quickly formed a connection and the evening turned intimate. Their initial meeting was brief, but left a lasting impression on Mark. However, after his short visit, he returned to Belgium, initially perceiving the relationship as a passing encounter rather than the beginning of something deeper. But a few weeks later, Berlinah contacted Mark with surprising news. She was pregnant. Now, being a really honorable, good man, Mark decided to relocate to Bristol to support Berlinah and their unborn child. He moved into her home. He enrolled in a local university and secured a job as a construction engineer. He really wasted no time. The relationship seemed strong, and Mark provided for Berlinah financially, even assisting her family in South Africa, which I think is crazy right out the gate, Bev. What do you think?
Oh, I definitely think that's a little bit much.
Yeah.
That being said, they're about to be a family.
Sure.
So maybe he felt some type of obligation to that. And
Fair.
as you said, he's an honorable man. So
Why
you
not?
know, I can see why he's done it.
Yeah.
Would I do it?
F no.
Probably not, to be honest. Maybe not that quick, at least. Like, I would want to meet them first and, like, get to know the family. And then maybe, you know,
Yeah.
because what if it's just going to, like, her bank account or something, you know? You never know.
You never
People
know.
be shady. But
It's true.
hopefully she's being honorable in saying that her family actually needs assistance, and that is where the money's going.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, though, I wouldn't even probably pay for her if I was Mark. I'd be like 50-50.
Yeah.
Like, we also just met. I just couldn't fathom paying for someone's entire life, basically, and their extended family.
No, I don't think I could either, honestly.
Not for me. But people make their choices, I guess.
Yep. She's about to be the mother of his child, so there's that.
Yeah, there's a little more to it.
Yeah, there's more to it for sure.
Boyfriend-girlfriend type stuff. However, the promise of a future together was soon overshadowed by heartbreak. Berlinah informed Mark that she had a miscarriage, and there was no more baby. This loss marked a turning point. By then, Mark had already established a life, as we discussed, and he had commitments to his career and education. So he decided to remain there and continue his efforts to build a future with Berlinah despite this tragedy. So obviously they liked each other for sure. Now, over the next 5 years, the dynamic between Mark and Berlinah began to change. Their relationship, once filled with hope and possibility, Bevy, grew increasingly strained and volatile. Berlinah exhibited controlling and manipulative behavior, creating an environment of emotional turbulence.
Now, I feel the need to say this right here, and I could be wrong. I could be purely speculating and thinking the worst of Berlinah, but did it cross your mind as you were looking into this case that Berlinah perhaps lied that she was pregnant to start out with, and that she maybe didn't miscarry a child, but in fact was never pregnant? I mean, she seems to gain a lot from Mark moving there and paying for his life. And then with the change of their relationship to her being more controlling and manipulative, maybe it was always that way.
I can see why you might think that, Beverly.
Right? Did you think that when you were writing it?
Yes.
Right?
I'm not saying like that's for sure what I thought, but the thought popped into my brain, be like, was she telling the truth?
Yeah, like, are we just increasingly skeptical about everybody's behavior, that we're like, liar!
We think the worst of everyone.
Or is this what really happened?
Yeah, and then on the flip side, like, I feel bad if they really did have a miscarriage, right?
Yeah.
But
sad. That's sad.
You're going to hear some other things in this case that might actually, you're going to hear them and think back to this part of the podcast.
Think of this exact conversation.
And if you think she's 100% telling the truth, you might question it then. But we don't actually know, so pure speculation.
But she seems a little shady.
Yeah, for sure.
At least enough for us to think it.
Now, as time passed, Mark struggled with the tension in their relationship, but found it challenging to extricate himself from the ties he had built.
Yeah, like, he's rooted deep into this relationship. 5 years later.
Oh, yeah. Like, 5 years long relationship, and you really have to be confident in making that decision to leave, but it makes it so much harder the longer you invest in it, right?
100% it does.
Yeah. Now, by July 2015, at the age of 28, Mark began seriously contemplating an exit from the relationship. The years of volatility and Berlinah's increasingly erratic behavior had taken their toll on him. He started considering ways to move on and regain control of his life. So, Mark ventured back onto dating sites and rather quickly met a woman named Violet. She also lived in Bristol. And after a week of chatting online, they met for a coffee and then later went to the movies. They clicked instantly, but they faced one very significant obstacle. Mark was still with Berlinah.
Yeah, like, sorry, but I honestly understand he's contemplating the exit, but literally break it off, dude, before you move on. Like, not a good move.
Right? Anyways, he admitted his situation to Violet. He was very honest, and they agreed to cool things off until he ended things with Berlinah.
Well, at least there's that, right?
Yeah. You can't deny the feelings, but at least they're doing their best now that it's already popped up, right? Shortly after meeting Violet, Mark broke up with Berlinah and moved into a hotel. He informed Violet of his decision, and Mark cautioned her not to email him anymore, fearing retaliation since Berlinah had hacked his email and could see everything and anything she wanted. At the end of August, Mark moved in with Violet, but when he arrived, his physical state shocked her. He had visible injuries, Bev. He had a large cut on his neck, he had deep scratches that were 4 to 5 inches long across his chest and his back, which he said were from Berlinah's nails during a rage-filled attack before he had moved out. She was pissed. He was leaving her.
I mean, you can be pissed, but don't put your hands on somebody.
100%.
And, like, obviously you've already told me that she had some controlling behavior, but having access to his email, you know, physically assaulting him before he leaves the relationship, like, that kind of puts it a little bit more into perspective, just how controlling she was, right?
Yeah. She wasn't just controlling. It's like, I want things done a certain way. It's like, I'm going to control you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's abusive, right?
Oh, yeah. Now, in the days following, Berlinah bombarded Mark with phone calls ranging from angry tirades to desperate, tearful pleas for him to return. In one conversation, Berlinah told him she was appalled that he would leave her in a time of need. She needed support after all. Her friend just had a heart attack. She explained she would stop crying if he would just come over and see her. But Mark refused. Violet also received approximately 15 anonymous calls where the caller remained silent, although unspoken. They had their suspicions that it was Berlinah, because why the fuck would it not be?
Yeah, 100%. Just going off the deep end here.
Yep. Now, Mark received a message that really concerned him. Berlinah was blackmailing and harassing him. She had threatened to call the police and tell them he had images of child abuse photos on his devices if he didn't go and talk to her. Overwhelmed and out of options, Mark contacted the police. He presented evidence of the constant calls, texts, and emails to him and Violet. He was concerned for his and Violet's and even Berlinah's well-being. Recounting an incident from a couple weeks prior when he tried to end things with her, she threatened to stab herself, but instead ingested a handful of pills right in front of Mark, and fearing an overdose, he called the ambulance for her. She went to the hospital to be treated. Now, the police kind of chalked up this behavior to those of a grieving woman and assumed it would eventually blow over. Nonetheless, they did their due diligence and visited her and told her it would be in her best interest to stop further contact with Mark and Violet. They're like, yo, lay low. You're getting a little crazy. Doing too much. Chill out.
But I can see why Mark has his concerns for everyone's well-being in this situation.
Yeah. She's a little seeming like unhinged.
Well, she literally took actions to end her life as a result of this, right? So he's concerned for Berlinah. But then Berlinah is like kind of getting a little bit outrageous. And he's like, what could she do to Violet and me, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not a good situation.
Nope.
I feel like in this type of situation with all of the evidence that Mark has given the police, I feel like a simple conversation to be like, lay low, you're getting a little out of hand, is like an understated action.
Yeah.
You know, like I think it's a little bit more serious than that. Yeah,
like maybe a restraining order is necessary, even though that doesn't always stop people, but, you know.
I think it's just like how often in murder cases do we see this type of behavior before a murder occurs, right?
Yeah.
Like I just think it's a serious like uptick of like aggressive or serious behavior. Not aggressive. Like, what am I trying to say? It's just like, it's like her behavior.
More threatening behavior?
More threatening. Thank you, Becky.
Oh, wow,
it's just consistently more threatening.
Yeah.
You know, so yikes.
Now, even though Mark broke up with Berlinah, he didn't want her to suffer completely. Like, he knew she'd be sad. Yeah.
About her.
So he continued paying Berlinah's bills and tuition, despite him trying to move on. Now, maybe that's a common thing. I don't know, but I wouldn't do that. Cut it off. No more money.
Cut the cord, Mark. But it does speak to his genuine and character. Genuine. We said to say different things. I was going to be like genuinity. I don't know. It just speaks to his character. Yes, he's an honorable guy.
Totally. Then on September 21st, Berlinah messaged Mark claiming she was devastated by the breakup and planned to quit university and return to South Africa. She demanded money for a flight there, which Mark refused. Like, this is where he draws the line.
Yeah.
You know?
It's too much.
Then the next day, she called begging him to visit her. Now, Mark was really concerned about her mental state from that conversation, and he actually agreed to go over that evening to talk things out. After informing Violet and reassuring her of his intentions, Mark went to Berlinah's house on Ladysmith Road. They made dinner and discussed their relationship. Mark firmly stated that they were not getting back together. The conversation turned into an argument, prompting Berlinah to pack some belongings and leave for a hotel. So she left her own house and left Mark there.
That, to me, that's weird.
It was weird. I'd be like, GTFO.
Yeah, get the fuck out of my house, Mark.
I hate you.
You don't want me? I don't want you in my house.
Yeah, get out. But she left. Maybe just, some people like storming out for the effect.
Yeah.
I'm freaking pissed. Yeah, slam a door and I'm gone.
I get it.
Yeah.
Dramatic, but I get it.
Love a statement. So Mark decided at that point it was pretty late in the evening and he was just going to stay the night since Berlinah had left. He would head home in the morning. Around 3 a.m., a neighbor named Thomas was woken by what he initially thought were foxes fighting outside. I don't know in that area if there's tons of foxes, but, you know, if I hear something loud, I don't I'm automatically seem to be like, oh, those damn foxes outside.
No, I wouldn't
Also,
either.
what does the fox say? What do they sound like?
What does the fox say? You know that song?
Of course I know the song.
Wait, is that what you were referencing?
Of course.
Over my head.
Do people actually ask that question without the song? I don't think so.
Whatever.
Although that's probably how the song was made in the first place. But
what do the fox say? Anyways, yeah, I wouldn't assume it was foxes, but there has to be foxes in the area.
Sure.
Otherwise, Thomas, what are you doing?
What are you
saying?
doing?
Why are you thinking that way?
it's right. So he grabbed a golf club just to go outside and investigate, you know, break up a fox fight if necessary. But he soon realizes it was a human screaming for help. So rushing outside, he saw Mark in his boxers, his face and upper body covered in dark gray black substance. And at first, Thomas thought Mark was on drugs, you know, just because of how erratic he was, screaming, not really making sense. But he quickly recognized the severity of the situation. And when he asked what happened, Mark screamed, "Someone threw acid over me. Can't you see?" So Thomas called emergency services right away. And when he asked who had done this, Mark named his ex-girlfriend, Berlinah.
Oh my God, no freaking way, Rebecca.
Emergency operators instructed Thomas to get Mark into a shower immediately and try and wash off whatever was on him. Another neighbor offered their bathroom and they helped Mark to safety. He repeatedly pointed to Berlinah's house, saying she lives there as they walked past it. Inside the neighbor's home, it became very evident how severe Mark's injuries were. His skin was peeling off and melting off, exposing raw tissue. When emergency responders got there, they rushed him to the hospital. But despite pain medication, Mark's agony was evident. He begged them to ensure Violet's safety and pointed to Berlinah's tattooed name on his stomach, saying, "She needs to go to jail for this." Doctors admitted Mark into the decontamination unit and were able to confirm he had been doused with a highly concentrated sulfuric acid. They tried their best to neutralize the acid. By the time he arrived at the hospital, much of his skin on his face was gone. His nose, left ear, and both eyelids had melted away.
Holy crap.
His eyes had turned gray, and doctors feared total blindness. Shortly after Mark's arrival, he fell into a coma. Because Mark had named Berlinah as his attacker, police went to her house. When they arrived, they found her calmly sitting on the couch. Beside her was a towel, acid-stained jeans, a paintbrush, and a glass mug with drops of clear liquid in it. Officers asked if she knew what had happened to Mark. She pointed to her pants and the towels, saying, "Acid. I've been using it to distress jeans." They also noticed a white plastic bottle sitting on the table containing a clear liquid, later determined as concentrated sulfuric acid, which Berlinah claimed as well that she initially bought it to unclog her drain. So right away, she's given like two different stories. Also, like, why would you buy sulfuric acid that's super dangerous and use that for your jeans?
Or even your pipes, man.
Right? Like, just buy drain cleaner.
Yeah.
There's a percentage of sulfuric acid in the drain cleaner, like Drano. There's a percentage. That's why you shouldn't get that on your hands.
Right.
But at least you can wash it off to avoid your skin melting off.
Yeah, it's not like pure sulfuric acid, right?
Yeah. So it just seemed kind of weird that that's what she was saying, because also sulfuric acid will fuck up, like, clothing.
Yeah.
Not just like, oh, it's acid washed.
It's just a dangerous substance to use for such, like...
what she's claiming to use it for.
Like, yeah, like jeans and to clear your pipes.
Yeah, like, get some bleach for the jeans. Use some Drano for the pipes, you dummy.
Yeah.
I don't know. When the police were there, they also noticed that in the bedroom, the bedding had black residue all over it. It was more prominent on the bed's pillows and part of the top part of the blanket. That was from the acid. It had dissolved the bedding.
Damn.
Yeah. Berlinah was arrested and taken in on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm with intent. Now, when they continued to speak with Berlinah, she claimed that during an argument, Mark became violent and had pulled on her underwear. She didn't go into detail about that, but I assume she's trying to imply that he was trying to...
Sexually assault her.
Exactly.
Yes.
And in self-defense, she grabbed a mug she thought contained water and threw it at him. She thought the substance in the mug was water because earlier in the evening, Mark had gotten it for her to take medication. She said she realized it was acid only when Mark's skin began to smoke and turn black. And then she said to the officers, he wanted me to burn my insides. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Mark betrayed me.
Wow, so she's painting it as though he was the one trying to attack her. Even though she had left for the hotel, supposedly. Like, he thought he was alone at her house. Otherwise, why would he stay?
Right? Especially knowing kind of how erratic she was being.
Yeah, she's
Why
trying
would he
to flip
stay?
the script.
She is. So the police asked Berlinah, after you realized the fluid was not just water and Mark began to scream in pain, why didn't you call an ambulance? And she said to them, it didn't even cross my mind. She was confused about loads of things. I was just confused. And you're like, oh, were you confused with his skin melting off? Was that confusing to you?
No, this
Is that not an emergency situation?
She's full of bullshit.
I know, just terrible, right?
How evil do you have to be to see someone, like, literally, like, their skin melting off and do nothing about it?
Like nothing. Eventually, police realized that from the time Berlinah had thrown the acid on Mark to the time the neighbors found him, she was just sitting there on the phone with a friend. Like, not like, oh, like she's just chilling, like nothing. So she made a phone call, just not to emergency services. Isn't that so shitty?
Yeah, like, what a terrible person for that, honestly. What a terrible person for throwing acid on a person. Like, I can't.
Yeah. No, it's literally...
Hello, my name is Kristen Riguidel, and I'm a licensed insurance broker across Canada and in the United States. But I want to ask you a question. Is life super predictable? No, there's always going to be curveballs in life, but there's two things that I can guarantee you. One, we're all going to have to pay taxes, and two, we're all going to die. I know, it's morbid, right? But it's true. And that's where life insurance comes in. Life insurance is a selfless act. At the end of the day, it's meant for your loved ones in the event you were to pass away unexpectedly. And not that money can ever replace us, but I always liked the idea of leaving some money behind for my brothers, whether that be for their college education, or a down payment on a house, or even just time off of work to grieve. Because the last thing I would want for my family is to have to go to work and pay the bills while they're grieving. And so life insurance gives you the peace of mind that no matter when you pass away, your loved ones are taken care of. With flexible plans, affordable premiums, and coverage that fits your unique needs, I do the shopping around for you so that you can get the protection without the hassle. Because taking care of your future doesn't have to be complicated. If you'd like to discuss options, you can send me an email at krigidel15LRXC@wfgmail.ca or give me a phone call at 403-785-7670 to learn more and get a free quote today so you can live tomorrow with peace of mind.
Just so terrible. Now, after speaking with Berlinah, the police don't feel that she is telling the truth. So police investigate further, learning from Mark's father and friends about Berlinah's history of abusive behavior, including pouring boiling water on Mark's arm in 2011. After a senseless fight, the injuries were bad enough where Mark sought out medical attention for his burns. He had told the attending doctor he spilled hot tea on himself. On numerous occasions, Berlinah had scratched and hit him repeatedly. Not only did she harm Mark, but he had told his father a few times Berlinah had hit herself in the face and caused bruises, and told him that she would report Mark to the police for domestic violence if he ever left her. On a couple other occasions, she had even confiscated his passport after he had tried to break off the relationship, preventing him from returning to Belgium and leaving her.
It's really sad to just see the abusive nature of their relationship. She was obviously abusing him.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
for sure.
He was in an abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm. And I find those scenarios are really tough because you are making it so, like, they're damned if they stay and they're damned if they go.
Yeah.
Right? you're putting them in a weird position. So it's like,
This is like a classic case of abuse.
yeah.
Like, one of the most dangerous times for any person who is being abused is when they leave a relationship, right? And obviously Mark had done that. He's at the point where he has left the relationship, and look what's happened.
Yeah.
The abuse has now hit an all-time high, and she has scarred him and harmed him, disfigured him, if you will, literally forever.
Yeah, for sure. Now, in the months leading up to September 2015, Mark had confided in his father and friends that he was becoming increasingly concerned for his welfare when it came to Berlinah. He was scared of her and what she might do to him or herself. It sounds as if he was almost like trapped in this relationship, you know?
He was.
Yeah. Now, during their investigation, police obtained warrants to access Berlinah Wallace's psychological records, which revealed significant insight into her behavior and mental state over the years. In December of 2013, Berlinah met with a university counselor to discuss her anger issues. During the session, she openly admitted to engaging in physically violent, intimidating, and threatening behavior, especially towards her partner, Mark. Her admission painted a picture of a woman who struggled to control her emotions and frequently acted out in very destructive ways. The following year, Berlinah had another session, this time with the university's psychiatric nurse. In that meeting, she confessed that she would experience an adrenaline rush whenever she felt wronged by someone. She described how this surge of emotion would make her want to destroy everything around her. This really disturbing admission highlighted the intensity of her anger and her complete inability to manage it constructively. So after Mark broke up with Berlinah in 2015, she again met with the psychiatric nurse, this time to cope with the aftermath of their separation. She described feeling a mix of depression, anxiety, anger, and betrayal. She confessed that she was having a particularly hard time coping with the breakup and Mark's new relationship. Sure, I can agree with that. That would probably be very hard to see. 5-year relationship ends and your man's already onto a brand new relationship. That's tough. Obviously, her behavior is out of control, but I can agree that's hard to deal with. Now, these psychological records became a very crucial piece of the evidence, shedding light on Berlinah's deeply ingrained emotional volatility, her history of violent and destructive impulses, especially when she felt slighted or abandoned. Now, the police also had warrants that uncovered Berlinah's troubling internet history, Bev. She had 82 different searches for information on the effects of sulfuric acid. She also viewed dozens of articles and images of acid attack victims.
Yeah, like she said, it was just for clearing her pipes and some acid-washed jeans. Not.
It was a little more intense than that, you know? Now, one of the cases she viewed was very controversial, and it is a well-known case in the UK. The man's name is Andrew Gardner, and he had reportedly been violent towards his wife, leading her to file for divorce. In an alarming turn of events, he gave her a cup of drain cleaner that was more than 93% sulfuric acid, tricking her into drinking it unsuspectingly. The consequences were catastrophic. The acid began dissolving her insides, causing immense pain and irreparable damage. She was rushed to the hospital, but tragically succumbed to her injuries shortly after. Andrew Gardner initially claimed that his wife had accidentally ingested the acid. Yes, accidentally, framing the event as a tragic mistake. However, as the investigation unfolded, he later revised his story, suggesting that she was under severe stress from work and the divorce and had chosen to drink it herself, despite the gruesome circumstances and the conflicting accounts. Gardner was ultimately found not guilty of her death in a court of law. So the fact that Berlinah had looked up this particular case seemed very significant to the police. It underscored her premeditation and provided critical insight into her thought process before her attack on Mark and how she kind of rearranged the events, right?
Claiming that he was the one that was trying to make her ingest it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Berlinah's internet searches also showed that days before the attack, she ordered a 1-liter bottle of 98% sulfuric acid from Amazon. It cost her just a little over 17 pounds. That was the same day when she received the police warning about harassment. Right after the officer left, Berlinah made a call to a mental health hotline and told the operator that she had just taken a handful of pills, and they sent an ambulance to her home, and she was taken to the hospital and then was released the following day. A few days later, Berlinah received her sulfuric acid order and immediately removed the acid bottle's label, including the warning label. After learning all this, Berlinah Wallace was formally charged with grievous bodily harm with intent.
Now, again, I could be making something up when I say this, but it's just the vibe I get. And that is, we kind of pointed out how weird it was that she left the home and went to the hotel. Mm-hmm. But I almost feel like it was a calculated decision. And perhaps her and Mark kind of made the decision together, like, you'll stay here for the night. It's really late. I'll leave.
Right.
Like, we don't know the conversation that they had.
Exactly.
But it does seem like that was probably what happened, right? And then she knew he would be at her house and could easily come back and pour sulfuric acid on him.
For sure.
So I just think it was a calculated move. We initially thought, how weird is it? You know, I would tell the person to leave, but I definitely think it was a part of her plan.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem a little bit calculated for sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now back to Mark. When he arrived at the hospital, his injuries were extensive. They said it was the worst the doctors had ever seen from any acid attack. After he slipped into the coma, the medical team began the painstaking process of removing all the dead tissue from his face, upper body, and limbs. They also had to harvest tissue from the unaffected areas to create skin grafts in an attempt to heal the dissolved areas. By the end of the procedure, more than 40% of Mark's body had been traumatized. His face was completely disfigured, making him unrecognizable. Efforts to save his eyesight preserved only partial vision in one eye. Due to the severe damage to his left leg, it had to be amputated.
Holy crap, Becky.
Now, the surface stuff is really bad, you know, but it was so bad that his internal organs had also been critically affected. And the reason why this happened is because when they tried to dilute the sulfuric acid that was on his skin and body, they didn't have anything strong enough to 100% dilute it. So although they made efforts to stop the acid from eating away, it slowly continued. So it wasn't just his skin, you know, his nose, ears, that stuff. Okay, you can still...
You're disfigured.
Yeah.
But
and that
you
sucks.
can live.
Exactly. But it started getting into his organs, like I said. It affected his heart, his liver, and kidneys. And the damage was permanent. It left them unable to function properly. There was also damage to his gastrointestinal tract, causing internal bleeding. His throat was so compromised that a tube was inserted to keep his airway open. Over the next several months, Mark experienced recurring chest and lung infections, requiring a tracheostomy tube to clear fluid buildup. He went into septic shock multiple times. The first 4 months of his recovery focused on entirely keeping him alive. And during those first 4 months, he was still in a coma. During this time, Mark's father, Kees van Dongen, flew from Belgium every weekend to be by his son's side. He worked during the week and made the journey to Bristol every Friday evening. Miraculously, in January of 2016, Mark woke from his coma. However, the extent of his injuries became even clearer. His motor nerves and vocal cords had been so damaged that Mark was left paralyzed from the neck down, unable to speak. Now, unlike most paraplegics, Mark could still feel everything. The acid had been so potent that it continued to eat away at his muscle tissue and bone, causing relentless pain and itching. Mark remained in the ICU for 11 months, enduring constant care from a team of specialists. He relied on intravenous feeding, a ventilator, dialysis, and a catheter. His pain was attempted to be managed. Despite the high dose of opioids, this was not very successful, and Mark was in a lot of pain, and it was constant. This whole time, Mark's father stayed by his side nearly 24 hours a day. He talked to him, scratched his itches, and repositioned him to ease his pain. To communicate, Kees pointed to letters of the alphabet, and Mark signaled the correct letter by sticking out his tongue. When his father asked who was responsible for the attack, Mark spelled out Berlinah's name.
Now, I just have to give props to Kees. Because what a devoted father.
Right? He gave up everything to be by his son's side. I think a lot of parents would do that, but most people aren't put in that situation, right?
Right. It's just nice to see that while Mark was going through, obviously, a treacherous, terrible time, that he had somebody there that truly cared for him.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So in July of 2016, after 5 months of speech therapy, things are starting to look up. Mark was able to use a speaking valve attached to his throat tube and was able to talk again. So he was able to communicate with his dad and staff and all these people helping him. And that really, heightened his mood a bit.
No kidding.
Detectives also took that opportunity to speak with him about the night of the attack. Mark recounted waking up in the dark at 3 a.m. to an eerie laughter, followed by Berlinah's chilling words, "If I can't have you, no one can." He felt something strike his face, followed by excruciating pain that quickly spread to his chest and arms. Panicked, he ran out of the house screaming for help. First of all, "If I can't have you, no one can." We hear that more often than you think it really happens.
Yeah, in abuse cases, that is often what the abuser says, right?
Yeah.
That's their frame of mind.
Yeah.
In all of this. Like, the possessiveness and the control that abusers feel that they should have over another person is unreal. And that statement really just sums it up.
Yep. Now, even though things were looking up for Mark, his suffering extended beyond his physical injuries. He was diagnosed with depression and PTSD, for which he was prescribed antidepressants. Mark was determined to move forward, though. He knew he would require lifelong assistance and face chronic pain. But despite this, Mark's resilience shone through. After months of physiotherapy, he managed to move his arm slightly and tickled his father's hand, which was very, positive for them because there's hope, right?
A sign of hope, yeah.
Now, Keith wanted Mark to return to Belgium to be with his family. But Mark made the choice to stay in the UK with Violet, who had stood by his side the whole time as well. On November 22nd, 2016, Mark was transferred from the ICU to a care home. That same evening, Mark called his father in distress. Immediately, Keith drove back to Bristol. He arrived early the next morning. He found Mark covered in his own feces. The staff had refused to help him due to his appearance. He scared everyone, I guess.
Wow.
I know.
Like, you're in a care home. You think that you would
Get care.
Yeah, but you would also think that the staff there would at least be aware of your situation and, not be fearful of it, right? Like, wouldn't they get the lowdown on, what happened and what the situation is? Ugh, that makes me very sad. To top it all off, he's covered in shit. Come on now.
Literally the worst. This incident prompted Keys to arrange for a private ambulance to bring Mark back home to Belgium, where he was placed in palliative care. They were informed of his situation, no one was scared of him, and they treated him with the utmost respect and dignity. Now, by the end of November, Mark was informed that his paralysis was permanent. This shattered his hope of regaining mobility through any rehabilitation. Just a fucking punch to the gut.
Yeah,
he was working so hard,
Yeah, he had hope that he would live, not, I don't want to say normal life, but he had hope that he would regain function enough to allow for some independence, right?
Yeah, for sure. But this news devastated Mark, and he decided to pursue voluntary euthanasia. On December 1st, 2016, he submitted his application, and a specialized team of doctors and psychologists reviewed his case and deemed Mark competent to make the decision to fill out the application. They concluded that his suffering, both physical and mental, was completely unbearable, and that his quality of life would remain dire. During the 30-day waiting period required for euthanasia, Mark developed another lung infection. Doctors recommended a tracheostomy tube like he had before to prevent choking on fluid and allow him to breathe. However, if they inserted the tube, he most likely would have to deal with unavoidable vocal cord damage. Knowing that his euthanasia was approved and we were only a week away, he declined and he wished to retain his ability to speak with his father in his final days. On January 2nd, 2017, after 15 months of unimaginable suffering, Mark shared one last drink with his father before life-ending drugs were administered through a catheter in his heart, and he passed away at 7:15 p.m. Now, I have to say, this one really got me, Bev. I had to take breaks when I was writing this, because I could not imagine, I couldn't imagine knowing that this was going to be my last week speaking with my dad and having my last drink, knowing that I didn't want to live anymore because I was so, like, in so much pain because someone else's absolutely selfish actions. And then on the flip side, have my father know that this is the last time I'm ever going to speak with him. And although I know all murder and death is very sad, but to me, Berlinah taking this away from Keith and Mark just, like, hurts my soul so much. Because he had to make that decision for himself, because that's not a way to live in, like, so much pain and misery, right? And just something about this just really upset me.
I think it's tough. Oh, Becky, I actually really get it. You're making me cry too. I'm like getting emotional just watching you be upset. But I actually get it because he had to endure he had to choose to die.
Yeah.
You know, when that's not the way his life was going. That's not what he wanted for himself. It's like she literally made him have to make such a difficult decision. And it's like, it was like, let me be clear. She's responsible for his death. Yes. She is responsible, but he was the one who had to make the decision. That's what makes it so tough, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
So, and I just sit here and I think of, like, what would you say in that conversation? Like, I wouldn't want to let go. You know, like, he must have been so tormented. And this case got me, I have to say.
I get it. It's been hard listening to it for sure.
Yeah.
Like, he seems like such a good person.
Yeah. And same with, like, clearly he was raised from a good family too, so.
Yeah.
So, news of Mark's death reached the UK authorities, and Berlinah Wallace was given the additional charge of murder. At her trial in November 2017, Berlinah's defense argued that she could not be held accountable for Mark's death since he chose to end his life. Now, initially the judge agreed, but the prosecution felt strongly in the opposite range, and they appealed that decision, arguing that Mark's decision was a direct result of the physical, mental, and emotional pain caused by Berlinah's action. And without her doing that, would have never had to have made that decision, right?
Exactly.
Now, fortunately, the Court of Appeal ruled that Berlinah could be tried for murder. In May 2018, Berlinah stood trial for both murder and applying a corrosive fluid with intent. Easily, the jury unanimously found her guilty of the latter charge. Before deciding on the murder charge, though, the jury was given the directive to deliberate 2 questions. Number 1, was the acid attack a significant cause of Mark's death? If the answer was no, she could not be found guilty. If the answer was yes, then question number 2 must be considered, and that was, could Berlinah have foreseen that Mark might choose to end his life as a result of his injuries? After 15 and a half hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty on the murder charge. I was fucking floored.
Yeah.
I don't understand how they could have said no to both those questions.
Me either, Becky.
And I'm like, when I think about it, I sit there and I take out my emotions, because obviously I'm emotional about this one, but I can take my emotions out in the sake of justice. And I cannot see how they answered no. I just cannot.
Same.
So
that is ridiculous.
Now, I think the judge is kind of in the same boat we are, Bev, in our thought process. Because while sentencing Berlinah, the judge stated, "Nothing better demonstrates your malicious and callous intention than your refusal to provide any help, even when Mark was screaming in pain. At the core of the significant risk of serious harm which you pose to those, be it family or persons in a relationship with you, is your anger, which you are still unable to control. It is coupled with a brain capable of working out how to inflict damage upon the person who has incurred your anger. It has manifested itself in the most serious of offending, causing immeasurable harm. Life imprisonment is the only sentence which reflects not only the nature of your offending, but the continued risk you pose. In passing a life sentence, the minimum term to be served before you can be considered for release on license has to be determined. In my judgment, the appropriate determinate term of imprisonment would have been 24 years. In accordance with sentencing practice, when setting the minimum term for an indeterminate life sentence, the minimum term will be half of the equivalent determinate sentence, namely 12 years.
So she got 12 years for this.
12 years. before she can apply for parole.
Okay. Well, the judge obviously was like, I want to give you a life sentence.
But I'm not allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I'm not allowed to make your minimum 24 years before parole.
Yeah.
So.
But he obviously thinks life imprisonment would be the best course of action.
Yeah.
He's like, what the fuck were you thinking, you dumb fuck jury?
Yeah, exactly. That was like the most political way to say they're wrong.
Yeah.
Now, Mark's case highlighted the devastating consequences of acid attacks and led to stricter regulations on the sale of sulfuric acid in the UK. As of July 2018, a special license is required to purchase concentrations above 15%. If these restrictions had been in place in 2015, Mark most likely would still be alive today. Kees van Dongen became an advocate for justice in his son's name, expressing gratitude to those who supported Mark during and after his ordeal. Mark's brother Bart started a crowdfunding campaign to help Kees get his life back on track after the enormous personal and financial sacrifices he made to care for his son.
So the whole family's in on like, oh God, it's going to make me cry. I don't know why. I'm like, in Mark's time of need, his dad took care of him. And then in the dad's time of need, his other son takes care of him.
Yeah.
Like a good family.
For sure. You know, like he sacrificed so much. Like he sacrificed financially, personally, all this stuff, you know. So they're really helping him get back on track because, you know, the love of a father right there.
Knows no bounds.
Knows no bounds.
Oh, man. Becky. I will say, if you have to make the really difficult decision to end your own life as a result of like extreme suffering like this, I think even though it was a sad thing, having a drink with your dad being the last moment you have and being able to talk to him is maybe one of the better scenarios that you could imagine, right? Like get one last drink with your dad.
Yeah, I mean, if you get to choose your last moment.
Aww. Or if you have to choose your last moment.
Yeah, like, what better way?
Yes.
Anyways, Bev, fuck this case. I'm so sad. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for sharing, Becky.
And just your weekly reminder to download our weekly episodes, follow us on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, and give us a follow on our social medias. You can find us at Luminol on the Wall. Can't wait till next week.